Hey everyone, my name is Ned Lynch. Today is the 25th of November of 2017, and this topic is on imagery. And I'm here in Lanett, Alabama, which is my hometown. And I'm going to be working with an athlete who's a student in college. He's a freshman. He played high school baseball. He's been playing high school. I mean, you've been playing baseball since you were a kid. But he's now playing college ball, and he is currently injured from a rollover on his ankle. And so he's a perfect student for this lesson on imagery. So, have you ever used any sports psychology tools like imagery, goal setting, self-talk, or any of those things?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, awesome. So you have a little bit of background. What does imagery mean to you? Like when you think of that word imagery, what does it mean?
Like picturing something you want to achieve, just a mental image of a goal that you might have.
Okay, all right, awesome. Today's lesson on mental imagery, we're going to talk about, what imagery in sport performance, and how can I intertwine that with the other mental training tools like goal setting and self-talk and deep relaxation breathing. And Noah was a pitcher, and so that's what we're going to focus on today is pitching. Then there's a thing called an imagery script where you can write out like a story and to bring those images to life, and then you can actually speak those words into a voice file and listen to them before competition, and then you can put your favorite motivational music behind it. And perhaps that's what a lot of people are doing when you see them on TV and they've got headphones on. They're listening to a script. And a lot of times it's positive affirmations and just getting them into the moment so that they can perform. And, images mean a lot of things. I mean, just looking at this basketball player, what is he really thinking? Or this pitcher, you're looking at the stitching on the ball. I mean, it's unlimited, really, the mind. The body has limits, and so elite athletes, can get their bodies to a certain point that's a human limit, but the mind has no limits. So that's what takes a lot of these elite athletes, like Tiger Woods, just sitting here focusing. So imagery is a psychological skill. It can be learned, and you probably we all do it kind of naturally, but if you use it in a systematic means by a learned process that you can practice and then make corrections, then you can use it to facilitate your performance and increase it. And you can use that for any aspect of life, from sports to your schoolwork. But there's a lot of studies that have proven that imagery works. And I know from personal experiences as a fighter pilot that imagery was like the foundational skill that you had to have to survive. And I used it for mental rehearsal, I used it when I was planning, briefing, I used it while I was flying, I used it when I got back to evaluate how I did, and then like I was telling you, I used it to recreate an accident to solve the problem, to find the root cause of the accident. I worked it back using imagery. And so it's really just a simulation in the mind, and they have found through research that you're actually firing off the motor neurons in your muscles without even moving your body. And there's even studies that have shown that if it's done right and you have the implement or the weights, they did it with biceps curls, they were actually able to build strength in the arms of someone without even moving the weight. The other day I was with my daughter and she heard a fountain, and automatically that made her have to go to the restroom. And if I sit here and I think about some of the rock climbing cruxes that I've had to deal with, my hands start sweating. And I'm just thinking of those images, and it just shows you the power of it. And I know you experience that as well. Two of the big things about imagery is vividness and controllability. And vividness means like you see it in color, you see it animated, it just brings life to the situation. And then controllability is you being in control of that image and not being distracted by some negative image that can come into your brain. which is very similar to the way that our brain works with self-talk as well. So really self-talk and imaging are kind of working together in those thought processes. But, you know, we see images in everything we do. You know, you've heard the term, you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, I think if you take multiple pictures into like a moving scene at a fast pace, I mean, it's unlimited the amount of words that could explain that. And words really can't explain it at all, if you think about it. GRIT is a good acronym for me, which means goal setting, self-regulation, like relaxation, breathing, and then imagery, and then talk, like self-talk. And they found with imagery that if you start out with a foundation of just a basic image and then you build upon that in layers, you're able to process it better. And that really shows you the same kind of processes we use to set goals. So goal setting, as I believe, is one of the, where you develop that process that you're gonna use for your image. And it's gonna be related to that goal for that game. So you just have those two linked together. Regulation is, like I talked about, it could be that deep relaxation breathing that you do to relax yourself, because your right side of your brain controls your imagery and it controls your fine motor skills. So if you're tense, then that right side can't operate properly. And so you're gonna, you know, miss the free throw if you're playing basketball, or you're not gonna throw the pitch like you want to. And then sometimes you need to use some energization breathing just to get psyched up for the event. But there's a point where you can go too far, and it's like there's a point where you're not enough, so it's like a curve. So you got to figure out what works for you, and then try to remember that and picture that in your brain with an image. And imagery, a lot of times we're just thinking of it as pictures that we see with our eyes, but it can be all our senses. So you can hear the crowd, you can smell the grass, you can taste that salt, that taste in your mouth when you just need that drink of water, you know. You can feel the sweat on your skin, you can feel the bat, you can feel how your cleats are digging into. So when you're imagining, you can imagine all those different things. But you need to use which sense is, you know, prioritize those senses in your imagery when you're rehearsing or when you're recreating an experience that works for you and does not distract from the goal that you're doing. So if the crowd noise distracts you, then first build your imagery without that, and then you can use that crowd noise to try to think through how you're going to deal with that to eliminate that distraction, if that makes sense. That was the I for imagery, and then talk, self-talk, and you want your self-talk to be louder than any distracting thoughts. And you want that linked together with that image or imagery, the multiple images, to get your point across. So let's talk about the layers of GRIT, back to goal setting. And G, I say goal setting, but I also want to discuss a little bit about gaze, the quiet eye. When you look out onto the field, you're taking in, your eye is taking in everything for your situational awareness. And I like to say, you know, this is your attention span, the whole entire field, and then when you concentrate, you're bringing it into the infield, and then when you focus, you're bringing it into like a laser focus on a certain point. But looking at the eyeball, how it operates, and this is how the eye, what you're actually seeing. So I think from a holistic standpoint that your imaging is going to be very similar to the way your real eye processes as well. And so if you are focusing, and I learned this from when you're learning how to scan for high-speed traffic or trying to pick up a bandit aircraft, is that you can only focus at arm's length the area the size of a penny. So really, you're looking through a soda straw when you're trying to focus. And that's the reason if you drop something on the ground, you look around, you can't find it because you've got this little soda straw focus beam looking for it. But if you just, if you stop and just let your eyes take in from the peripheral standpoint, then your eyes can pick up movement especially. And your focus, you know, your centered laser beam focused vision can see in color and it can focus in really direct on things, but your peripheral vision cannot see color very well, if at all, but it's stimulated by motion. And so if you see a flash of light, you see that flash of light, your eye automatically goes to it. So it's almost a distraction as well, that limitation of you unable to hold. So you're focused here, but the flash catches your eye and tries to draw it away. Well, I think it's the same way with our attention span as well, and with our way of imaging. You know, I've noticed walking through the airport that all of a sudden I look up and I see the person that I haven't seen in 10 years. Now, why did I look up and see that person? I think it's because my brain is processing, it's bringing in things out here, and then it's directing you where to turn your focus. Growth, you always want to have that growth mindset of improving so you can improve the process as you're dealing with your imagery. And so the goals, step one of the layer is to execute the process in your mind, going through the motion of doing the exact movement as you desire to do. You're executing that exact process through your rehearsal, through an action plan that you've developed and have seen that it works, and it's taking you where you want to go. And it's giving you the results that you want and desire. If you're not getting results, then you need to be changing something in your plan to make the process work better. The second layer is self-control and regulation of your body, and you can use relaxation breathing for that. And we can talk about breathing later because that's in another lesson, but it's going to stabilize your brain. It's going to allow you to process things quicker and more accurately, and narrow things down to, you know, your timing will be better as far as when to narrow down and focus. And like I said, that was part of that right brain function that you can keep that imagery and fine motor skills up. You can also use it to control your heart rate and your respiration rate as well as blood pressure. So really you've got control over those elements of your body that a lot of people don't really have good control over. The third layer is the actual image that you want to take in, and there's two different views that you can go with. You can go with like a GoPro video kind of view from the head, like you're seeing the ball coming at you. You can see the stitching on the ball as the pitcher's throwing it to you, or you can see the catcher's mitt that you're aimed at and you're trying to throw. You can see the stitching in it. You're so focused in on that, and it's called internal because it's coming from internal, looking out like a GoPro camera. And then external will be like what you're going to see from the stands. And you have to pick which one works for you, so try both of them. But normally for executing the process, it's going to be internal, how you see doing it. But then how does that interact with my teammates and the flow of the game? Then you can think of it more from the, you know, overhead view from a big picture. Imaging can be done in real time. It can be slow speed, where if you're trying to really learn that technique that you're working on, you can slow it down in your mind and just break it down into real small pieces. Or if you're getting bored with it, you can kind of speed up the process by doing it fast once you get it down. And you want to also bring in that emotion, you know, that feeling that you have in a competition where that the feeling that you like in a competition. You know, what is it that makes you feel so good that that it makes you feel like you're really there? Because your brain cannot really tell the difference between the two if you recreate it with such vividness. Talk, and I like to say this is self-talk, positive self-talk, which would be motivational or it could be instructional, depending on what you need for that moment. And you have to determine, you know, what helps you. And then your timing of as you execute the process is like we talked about, either be in slow motion or fast speed or at real time. And it depends on the person. Everything in sports psychology has its own personal stamp on it because we're all made differently and we all operate differently and think differently. So you have to take it all in and then figure out, you know, this works for me, I don't like that, that works for him, that's cool. And then you can evaluate your imagery, you know, how did that help me in the game, or what do I need to do as I prepare for the next game? And I like to say prepare and anticipate. So the more you prepare, the more confident you're going to be to conduct your process and execute the game as the coach wants you to do it. And now we're going to go out on the baseball field. There's an acronym called PETLEP, which is PETTLEP, and the P means physical, like you're in the physical location of where you're actually going to pitch. We're on the pitcher's mound, and you're looking toward the home base or the home plate, and you've got your physical implements, you've got your hat on, you've got a jersey, you got a real ball, and you're in the environment. We can't simulate the crowd noise, but we could bring in some speakers and crank them up with some crowd noise and saying, you know, distracting comments that are sneering, you know.
Plenty of those.
Yeah. When you get those, do they bother you?
Not
No.
really.
Not really. You just know to expect it. Yeah, they even have speakers out here. You could have the music playing, all those things that can be part of that environment. And then the task is you're going to pitch, so you're going to stand like you are, you're going to hold the ball. You don't have to go through the exact motions with your arms, but you're going to be just thinking through all those ways that you would do it and then let it flow. And then timing, like we talked about, that could be the real time, slow motion, or you could speed it up. But typically for when you're standing out here with the actual implement, you want to use real time. And then for the other, that's PETT, and then L is learning. So for the phase that you're in as a college player, you're going to be focused on that skill level that you should have, that you're expected to have, and that you already have attained. And then as you get better at the real physical skill, then of course you will raise your level when you're mentally rehearsing it. So that's the L. And then the E is emotion. So that emotion that you get, what do you feel when you're pitching?
I want to be in control,
Yeah.
and a lot of times you just have to take your emotions out of it when you're pitching.
Yeah.
Because if you let your emotions get you, you're not going to be able to perform at the level that you want.
Right. So that would be like, you would say, I'm not going to include that emotion. You're going to suppress that emotion while you're practicing your imagery. And usually you don't want to bring up things like they say, you got to be careful what you say. When you say, don't do this, you just put that, like, don't think about the color red. I just put the color red, and what are you thinking about? The color red. So I'm not big on saying, hey, emotion, oh yeah, I want to eliminate that. Well, how can you eliminate it when you just created it in your head? So any of those elements you would want to eliminate, and then the perspective is the last P in this PETLEP model that they have, and that would be, you're rehearsing and recreating the experience of pitching, so you're thinking about it from the GoPro view, or if you want to see how you're interacting with first baseman or third, you can see it from the stands, or you can see it from the overhead, the field kind of standpoint as well. It doesn't matter, just basically you pick one. You could use both of them, you can intertwine them, whatever works for you. Have you ever thought of that? Or when you have mentally rehearsed things, are you thinking it from how you see it or how others?
Mostly how I see it.
Yeah, that's the most common. So Does all of that make sense?
Yes, sir.
You get it, the more senses you can bring into it, the more lifelike it's going to be in your brain. And being out here on the field, actually creates that mindset as well of being there. And um, it's going to vary. So you're going to pick what works for you and what makes your ability to rehearse and to create that feeling. And like you said, that you don't care to have that emotion when you're pitching. So you don't want to include things that distract you from that. If there is things that distract you, you can practice adding those in if that's the goal, is to practice imagery to work on distraction management, so to speak. And then we talked about how you can use your self-regulation breathing, which you already know how to do, and then the different types of imagery and how those are incorporated into your performance, and then the positive self-talk and how you link that with your images. Any questions for me?
Not that I know of.
All right. Thanks for your time, Noah, and good luck in your baseball season coming up. I hope to work with you again.